there, folks, and welcome to Christ in Every Word, a podcast of the Concordia Bible Institute, housed on the beautiful campus of Concordia University, Wisconsin. This is your opportunity to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest the sacred scriptures with me, Dr. Brian Gurman, assistant professor of theology here at the university and the director of the Concordia Bible Institute. We've been making our way through the Book of Ecclesiastes. Is there anything new under the sun? This is the new podcast, but is there really anything new under the sun? That's one of the things we've been thinking through, and I hope you've been enjoying. I know I have. I've found enjoyment in this because, after all, there is nothing better than that we eat, drink, and find enjoyment in our toil. See what I did there? Isn't that clever? Yeah. Got to start with something. There we go. But that's the other thing we've been talking about. Eat, drink, and find enjoyment in toil. Is there anything new? Eat, drink, find enjoyment. Those are some of the key phrases that Kohelet, the author of Ecclesiastes, puts forward for us to consider. We talked a lot about those in the first three chapters. We're going to skip over chapter 4, not because there's nothing important in there. Chapter 4 is actually it's really quite fascinating, really. We got to do what you got to do. But, chapter 4, it's fascinating because there's a sense in which the book of Ecclesiastes, the first three chapters, you get those things straight, and you're going to get the rest of the book straight. Or I'll tell you this much, if I know where you are on the first three chapters of this book, I kind of know how you will discuss the rest of it. I just think, if you're going to be consistent, really, but the thing is, so he kind of elaborates on what he's done, but the thing that's fascinating, I think, it's just quite fascinating, is that, we've been through, is there anything new, and eat, drink, and find enjoyment in your toil, and all these things. Kohelet is a master of taking conventional wisdom, the kinds of proverbs that you find in the book of Proverbs, and stretching it as far as it'll go and working with tensions and really trying to think through some of the deeper, more profound questions of life. But here's what's most fascinating, I think, about the book, is that he's not only stretching Proverbs, so to speak, in the first three chapters, but by the time you get to chapter 4, you think you can put a bow on the thing, he starts stretching his own stuff. By the time you get to chapter 4, Kohelet doesn't even want us to get on top of his own points that he's made in the first three chapters. So he comes to this grandiose observation about, I've done everything, I've seen everything, I'm the smartest guy, I'm the richest guy, I've gone through everything, and I'm going to conclude with my big old, some people call it carpe diem, I don't really like that person, but I'm going to conclude with my big old point, and that is eat, drink, and find enjoyment in your toil. And what does he do in chapter 4? I love it. The very first thing he does in chapter 4 after he comes to his grand conclusion is, boy, there's some things that make pleasure and work impossible, though, aren't there? And he starts to challenge his own grandiose conclusion, so to speak. So he comes up with 4 problems that make toil, that make enjoyment in toil, enjoyment in work, basically impossible. He talks about oppression, he talks about rivalry, he talks about isolation, he talks about government. And the beauty here of all this, it's just fascinating because there's a tension there too. Kohelet is presenting tensions all over the place, and it's just really kind of a profound way to think through some of the truths of life. To kind of, on the one hand this, on the other hand that, now what? And so in chapter 4, the tension there, we're not going to read the whole thing, I'm going to skip to 5 today, but the tension there in 4 is that if you have some sort of work, toil, vocation that's involved in rivalry, then that's the kind of stuff that leads to oppression, and it short circuits the community, undermines the community. But at the same time, so we need community, and all that. But Kohelet's also going to talk about a community without wisdom, then makes good government a problem. So it problematizes, I guess you can say, good government. So it's like, we're quick to point fingers on whatever the problem is, but that's not in Kohelet's mind, at least, that's not a surefire. If we could just get rid of all rivalry, then we can have a perfect community. But then at the same time, a community without wisdom doesn't necessarily, you're not going to, because you have a community doesn't necessarily mean the government they're in and all that's going to work out all right. A community without wisdom, you can set up any kind of thing in the abstract, but if you're not wise as a people who are doing away with oppression and trying to weed out the bad side, it's still not going to, it's only going to get you so far. There's a vanity even in that. And so it's just the way that he presents these tensions, both sitting around and doing nothing and working too much, are both to be pitied in the midst of all this sort of, the four problems that make pleasure in work impossible. I just think it's, for Kohelet, it's actually laziness and work. We have workaholics, right? We love our working atmosphere. We love what we do, and we do it so much that we have these, the workaholism, and are you a workaholic, and how, that whole thing. But for Kohelet, both laziness and workaholism are to be pitied because they're both actually a form of boredom. You're bored on both sides. Even the workaholic is bored in the sense that he's not content with the gifts of God. There's more to get. I'm busy. I don't no time for anything. So there's something quite profound in stop and smell the roses, because therein is a kind of gift from God that you just can't achieve on your own through whatever you're doing. So so the implications of what makes pleasure and work impossible, and the emphasis on community there. Boy, maybe I should have. Here's a whole podcast. I'm trying to skip over chapter 4. I ended up spending 5 minutes talking about chapter 4. It was just, there's some fascinating things in there. Maybe I made a mistake. I should be talking about 4 instead of 5, because 5 I really want to get to today. But I don't know. You'll have to. I commend it to you. 4's got some good stuff there about government and work and community and all of that. There's maybe some allusions to Genesis. It's not good for man to be alone. What's the significance there? And then there's the threefold cord thing too. So he just throws in this line: a threefold cord is not quickly broken, and it's kind of fascinating because 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, sort of thing. The church has traditionally seen that threefold cord as a reference to, it's a marriage text. A lot of people have used this in weddings. So you get the husband, wife, the threefold cord, the third person is God in the relationship. So that's not going to, that's kind of it's kind of fascinating that there's a wedding text in the middle of this pessimistic book of Ecclesiastes, right? Or however it's described. So anyway, okay, enough on 4. That's what we're jumping over. Let's take a look at chapter 5. I'll read it as usual in its entirety, but I probably will end up only focusing on 3 or 4 major chunks of this, as it were. So here we go. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, the text reads as follows. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few. For a dream comes with much business, and a fool's voice with many words. When you vow a vow to God, do not delay paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Let not your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity, but God is the one you must fear. If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter, for the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. But this is gain for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them, and what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There is a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in bad venture. And he is father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again. naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation and sickness and anger. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Alrighty, so there we have the text of Ecclesiastes chapter 5. A few different themes in there. There's probably some familiar words in there too, especially toward the end. We're gonna end with the end. How about that for a statement? Hey, what do you think about that? We're gonna end with the end. Yeah. Starting off at the beginning, this is just the whole essence of the scriptures. I guess in a way you could summarize the entire Bible with the whole first verse. I mean, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools. Do you hear anything familiar in these words? To listen is better than sacrifices. To obey better than the fat of rams. Offer to me a sacrifice of thanksgiving and call on the name of the Lord. This is the sort of thing. Well, I mean, who offered a sacrifice up and was told to obey is better than sacrifice, kind of a famous case. Well, that's Saul. And so here you have, I mean, just a couple kings removed, right? The Solomonic figure here speaking about obeying is, guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Don't be presumptuous. There seems to be this kind of, I don't know, Jeremiah's day, they did this too. The temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. And Jeremiah just critiqued it and said, you guys are... These people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. I mean, that kind of statement. Jesus would come around and say, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. In other words, all these sacrifices, you completely miss the point. If you just look at all these sacrifices and say, well, you know, we're just going through the motions. We're going to the temple. We're going to the house of God. We're going to church on Sunday. We're saying what we're supposed to be saying. We're singing what we're supposed to be singing. We're seeing that we're shaking hands. We're smiling. We're doing the whole thing, but we're just doing it to do it. And yet at the same time, Ecclesiastes is saying, you know, offer to me a sacrifice of thanksgiving. In other words, what's the inward condition of what's going on there? Do you believe the confession of sins? Do you believe in the mercy of God? There are some deeper questions that are being addressed here. Otherwise, it's all just going through the motions. Same also here. Guard your steps. Don't just think that throwing up a bunch of sacrifice, don't just think that it's the matter of, I'm going to church and I did my deed for the week. There's much more going on here. And so this is all over, even in the Psalms. Ears you have dug for me. To listen is better than to sacrifice. This is like the entire prophetic corpus, the entire prophetic critique of Israelite worship. I mean, this stuff's all over the place. The problem of just the hardened heart and the fact that no matter that the outward worship, the outward actions could be so distant from the inward reality. And you get to, even in the New Testament, the congregation has struggled with this. 1 Corinthians 11, they're practicing the Lord's Supper. They're using it. They're going through the motions, all right. But they're drinking it to get drunk. They're doing all these nasty. And Paul in 1 Corinthians 11 says, "Look, you guys are completely backwards on all this too." So there's a lot to be said there. But Kohelet sees this. He points out and says, "This is always going to be a temptation. Whatever kind of religiosity is out there, whatever kind of traditions or confessions or how you the expressions, okay, the expressions of the confessions of what's believed, what's confessed in the church, all those things, they can easily become idolized. They can easily become separate from what's truly supposed to be going on. God speaking his word, it's living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. It's going to put to death the old Adam. It's going to raise up a new man. These inward realities are much more than just walking into the building and glad handling a little bit and, okay, I did my deed. Same here. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter. Yeah, for God is in heaven and you are on earth. So the de facto posture here is one of humility. When you pray, this is Jesus. When you pray, don't heap up a bunch of empty phrases as the Gentiles do. Kohelet is much more. I just can't stand these treatments of seeing Ecclesiastes as this sort of pessimistic, ancient Near Eastern, blah blah blah. I've harped on this enough. There's a lot more New Testament in this Old Testament book than we give it credit for. James too. So when you pray, don't heap up empty phrases. Don't be sitting there and blabbing on and on about how awesome your prayers are and how much you've spoken about whatever and how much you be quick to hear, slow to speak. James 1, right? So this is another very common theme that Kohelet sees. Be not rash with your mouth. Again, who was rash with? Well, Saul was rash with his mouth and made rash vows and things like that. Be not rash with the default position when it comes to the things of God, his gifts, and his working through you in whatever you do. The default position should be one of humility. I always get suspicious of this when you meet some, you get all kinds of different stripes. The full gusto types, they have something to say all the time. And a lot of it can be godly stuff, godly speech, using Christian words and phrases and things like that about God and who he is and how he works and what he's up to in his or her life now and how all this is sorted out and working out and this and that. And let me tell you more about God and more about everything. And it comes to a point where just stop. The default should be one of passive reception of God's gifts. God is in heaven, you are on earth, he says. Talk about putting us in, the default should be exactly what Kohelet is going to say in verse 7, and that's why it's so profound. Fear of the Lord. You want to know that, I'm so wise, I know about everything that God's up to, and I'll explain everything about him and all this sort of stuff. You know what's wise? In fact, you know what the beginning of wisdom is? The fear of the Lord. So there's a time to just that. Here's a time where we can actually take a play from the playbook of Job's friends, who, although they messed up a bunch of things throughout that book, the first thing they did when Job was all jacked up, is they came to him and they sat in silence for 7 days before Job was the one that initiated the dialogue, by the way. But anyway, we can learn something from them. Slow to speak, quick to hear, because that has a lot to do with a meaningful life, finally. Holy moly, I'm looking at this time. It's cruising. I'm overdue for a break. We got to take that now. I'll pick it up on the other side in a sec.
We'll be back in just a moment to the Concordia Bible Institute podcast. In the meantime, I'd like to have you consider this question. What is most important in higher education? How do you prioritize all the knowledge to be gained at an institution of higher learning? Concordia University, Wisconsin, located on the shores of Lake Michigan in Mequon, Wisconsin, just north of Milwaukee, is an institution that is committed to excellence in learning, but at the same time realizes that excellence in itself is insufficient without development in vocation. We believe that God works through our vocations, our callings, in order to serve the needs of those around us. The mission statement of Concordia University puts it this way: Concordia University, Wisconsin is a Lutheran higher education community committed to helping students develop in mind, body, and spirit for service to Christ in the church and the world. You can learn more about the over 70 programs offered at Concordia by visiting the website, www.cuw.edu. And if you're benefiting from our Christ in Every Word podcasts, I encourage you to support this ministry by mentioning it to others and by offering your monetary support. Please consider supporting the Concordia Bible Institute by going to our website, www.concordiabible.org, and clicking on the Contribute page. And now, back to the podcast.
Alrighty there, folks. We're back with our study of Ecclesiastes chapter 5. We've got some ground to cover still. First couple of 2 verses. That's what we made it through so far. Only about 1,800 to go, so buckle in. But we have these. But there are huge themes here, and I can summarize some of these verses and just big chunks of things. But the first couple themes are: to obey is better than sacrifice. So don't just think life is not about just going through the motions. There's always something more meaningful to be discovered there, especially when it comes to the church, when it comes to the faith. And then flowing from that directly is, quick to hear, slow to speak. Don't be heaping up all these phrases about, there's so many enigmas. Vanity of vanities is what it's usually. There's so many enigmas about life that we can't figure out, even in this realm. Kingdom of the left, the stuff below. So who are we to sit here and blabber on and on about all the, the things that God is up to and kind of slice and dice all of his ways and things like that? Don't heap up a bunch of empty phrases. Don't the dreams with all this business and fool's vice with many words. Just jump into verse 7. When dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity. That's just a fascinating. It's just a fascinating. I mean, here. So vanity, hevel, hevelim, the vanity of vanities. This vanity, all these words and dreams, and just coming up with all this material on our own here. This hevel, this vanity, is actually quite different than it contrasts with all the earlier refrains of this hevel. I mean, at the end of the day, what's the response? I hinted on this before the break. At the end of the day, what are we supposed to do then? If we're supposed to, keep the prayers short and be humble and all these things. God is the one you must fear. Be humble. You want to know a thing or two about God? He's most recognizable in the gifts he's already given, in the things that are beyond your control. You want to know a thing or two about this? So this is very quite positive here. Ultimately, the true vanity here is not listening to God. This is in a sense, it's kind of, and I think I've seen it described this way, and I guess it's kind of in a sense, a kind of a breakthrough for Kohelet, because this is ultimately, look, I've got these tensions in life. I don't know how to make sense of oppression, rivalry, some of the problems of chapter 4. I don't know how to make sense of communities without wisdom, or the lack of communities, and a good government or a bad government with strong communities, or whatever. I can't make sense of these tensions. We're relational beings. We're not supposed to be alone, but how can we? But we're getting along in ways that are causing all sorts of nasty relationships, oppression, rivalry, all these dissensions that I mentioned. So we have all these tensions here, and ultimately, what does he do? He says, ultimately, listen. Go to the house of God and be humble. Know for sure what comes your way from his words. This is Psalm 73 all over again. He's looking. This is so much more orthodox than people give him credit for. Somebody needs to kind of stand up and say, this is not as bizarro world as people make him out to be. But Psalm 73 is that you're looking around, what are you seeing? You're seeing the wicked prosper. You're seeing all the corrupt CEOs making big cash and getting better and better, doing more and more wickedness, getting better and better. You're seeing all this. What is it? When I sought how to understand this, it seemed to me a wearisome task. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I discerned their end. It's the same thing with Kohelet here. It's the same thing. Until I thought again about Proverbs and the fear of the Lord being the beginning of wisdom. Until I went in there, I was going nuts. It seemed to me a wearisome task until I recalled that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And then truly, as Psalm 73 would put it, truly you do set them in slippery places, and they are going to fall. And those rich, everything is reversed. The richer they are, the poorer they are, actually. But again, it was through the sanctuary of God, through his gifts, through his words, through what he gives in his house, through the fear of him, through humbly receiving from him, the things that you can't muster through overworking and being lazy and all of these things, the things that that's ultimately what provides the kind of true wisdom that Kohelet is seeking and advocating. This is just like, you see what's happening here. There are discrete realms that are beginning to find overlap here. This is a very pivotal point. Genuine fear of the Lord is actually closer than this sort of, it's like genuine realism, the most real, it's closer to the truth than the people running around with all these empty phrases about the person and work of God. The dreams and the words and all the overworking, the workaholism and all of these things, that signals that the good life, boy, I don't know how else to say this, the good life, the self, the wise person, the ego, the self, is ultimately misguided. This is, you see how traditional Kohelet, just the difference between Proverbs, which just starts with the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, is that Kohelet actually takes you on the journey and he shows you the tensions, and then he comes around and says, yeah, fear of the Lord is actually the most real thing that this life will ever have. The truest, the realest thing out there is the fear of the Lord. Then we get another, it's awesome. This is just a fascinating book. He just has more to offer than we give him credit for, I think. Just so much here. But anyway, so there's an example here. Riches. Oh, we don't have to talk about these much, do we? Riches and the problems thereof. Well, well, we do and we don't. On the one hand, we don't, because it's so clear from the scriptures and from all sorts of things that riches can do some serious damage, right? Easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. And if that doesn't make sense, yikes. The parable, somebody, was it, who was I talking to? Somebody, of all the parables, basically half of the parables have to do with the problem of riches and things like that. So, on the one hand, yeah, we don't have to talk about that. It's very clear the Bible has lots to say about money. But then on the one hand, we do have to talk about it because the Bible has lots to say about it. We should have lots to say about it. We should hear it often. That should tell us something. Why is it so much? Why is it so prevalent? Because we need those words all the time. We need these reminders all the time. We need to talk about it all the time. The problems of riches, because of that. That's the severity, because it corresponds with the level of the severity there, the danger involved. So just in these next, I'll just lump these 7 verses together. But that's the greedy heart is never actually satisfied. That's one problem. The heart is a never-ending chasm, I think, an always yearning chasm, something like that Luther called it. So the first problem is that for Kohelet, riches, you will never be what you think riches will make you be. Problem 1. Problem 2, as riches increase, so do the worries, so does the vexation. Love of money is the root of all all kinds of evil. You get that in 1 Timothy, things like that. All his days he eats in darkness and much vexation. That's exactly how this works, though. You're run-of-the-mill life or whatever, and then somebody gives you something really pricey or something really, whoa, this is great, jewelry, something big, something really special. What do you, oh boy, where is it? Where did I put it down? Did the kids grab it? Is it safe? Is it locked up? I'm going to sleep. Is it locked up? Is it safe? We need better protection. We need some. I couldn't sleep last night. I was thinking about it. I got in an argument with my loved one, my family, my spouse, my kids, my whatever, my uncle, over that because about what to do with it. Who should have it? Inheritance issues. Oh, who should get that, and why? You see what's happening here. Kohelet's all over this. He's like, no. This darkness, vexation, sickness, and anger. You like riches? Do you like the idea of having a little more cash, bigger bank account? Darkness, vexation, sickness, and anger. Kohelet has lots to say about the profound wisdom There's another side of that coin. He has a lot to say about how profound riches can destroy the soul. Darkness, vexation, sickness, and anger. I mean, profound. That's the thing, is that we have these profound statements on the positive side. There's some quite frankly, the kind of thing that riches can do to you is way beyond us. So yeah, on that note, you're going to see riches, the danger of riches. It's just everywhere in the Bible. You get the Proverbs and Psalms all over the place. The parables, of course, of our Lord, and the epistles, and it's just everywhere. The dangers of riches, and it doesn't do any justice to the kind of joy that can be found in giving things away. There's a kind of joy in giving things away that's actually more profound than all the work in the world can muster. Kind of a story for another time, but these tensions that he presents, that's the kinds of things that he gets at with these tensions, that the ironies involved in life, and the way that the flesh runs after something when, wait a minute, it was actually the opposite the whole time, where a true nugget of truth and joy is found. Kohelet's all over that. It's just an awesome book. So, behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting, we've heard some of this before, is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil which one toils under the sun, the few days of life God has given him, for that is his lot. Again, this is what's been received. And there's a stronger, so we've heard this before, real quick, I'll read the last two then. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. So we've heard some of this before, I was going to say earlier. But there's a greater emphasis here on joy than in the earlier sections that we've. So this is very positive. This is very he says a lot about vanity of vanities. He has that refrain, but he also has joy refrains as well. A cheerful heart, one that finds enjoyment in toil, it just covers a multitude of difficult experiences, a multitude of this is just like, it's right up there with having the peace that passes all understanding in the midst of whatever you're going through in life. Finding enjoyment in toil, knowing that in the Lord our work is not in vain. I think I quoted that last time. There's a deep, profound sense of meaning and purpose in the midst of what we're doing, no matter what we happen to think about. It was a bad day at work, or whatever the case is. Luther saw this. He thought this is the conclusion of the whole book. This is a way to get rid of vain anxieties and to find joy in the toil here. Because when that happens, Luther would say, and I think this is I gotta wrap this thing up. But when that happens, when we're finding enjoyment in all the toil which we toil under the sun, the few days of our life, when we have truly found that enjoyment in our toil, we've recognized its role in God's working, the receptive kind of quality of our work under the Lord, our work in the Lord, that it's not in vain, that there's deep, profound meaning and purpose in what we do, working in the Lord, then here in the midst of evils, Luther writes, we enter already into paradise. That's awesome. I mean, I can't end in any better way than that. That's Luther, that's Ecclesiastes, and that's the profound kind of wisdom that we're going to have to keep thinking through as we move along. That also, as you can tell, is all the time that we have for this session of Christ in Every Word. And that is also my time to tell you to please consider mentioning this podcast to your family and friends so that they too can learn more about God's Word with us. A quick shout out here to a couple friends, Craig Larson and Dave Kreuter. Appreciate very much the podcast feedback that you've offered me and for being supportive of the Bible Institute's endeavors in that regard. Appreciate it very much. The mission of the Concordia Bible Institute is to provide Christ-centered Bible instruction from distinguished experts who teach Christ in every word of the Old and New Testaments to strengthen faith and spread belief in the one true God. Again, if you benefit from this podcast series, I encourage you to consider supporting the Bible Institute by going to our website, www.concordiabible.org. You clicking on our contribute page. You can also find us on Facebook. Leave a comment, question, like, whatever you want to do is fine with me. One last quick announcement, special seminar coming up September 24, Saturday, September 24, Dr. Paul Meyer, just a distinguished person in all kinds of, Professor Emeritus, Western Michigan University. He's been vice president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod 3-4 times. Just they say scholar and a gentleman, just going to be a fascinating presenter, author, teacher, professor, everything. Just, if you can, if you're in the area, Mequon, Wisconsin area, come see him. Saturday, September 24. You can find registration. Time to roll after that kind of thing. Registration information on our website. Until next time, I'm Dr. Brian German. Thanks for listening. I wish you God's blessings in Christ Jesus our Lord.